Portage in Maine is at the heart of Canada in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but so much is unknown about the heart of Canada because so much focus in the media and through politicians is on the big cities, Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. But what about Winnipeg? What about Manitoba? What about the heartland of Canada? Who better to talk about it than veteran television, radio broadcaster, social media influencer, a blogger, longtime Manitoba resident, and someone I'm proud to call a friend, Rick Loewen. Rick, how are you?
Very good. How are you, Jimmy?
Good. Manitoba is in a lot of ways a happening place. Stories about spending billions to upgrade Churchill and the Portlands to ship natural gas to Europe and other things. Give the people of Canada an update. Where are we in the state of Manitoba in 2026?
Oh, boy. Great question. By the way, I used to work with a mutual friend, Johnny Bourdignon, who said that basically in the GTA area where you are, nobody west of Timmins knows that Manitoba exists. So I'm happy that we're at least figuratively, if not literally, on the map with you guys. That's great.
Yeah, no, please. And that's why we're doing it, Rick.
Yeah. So where are we? Well, you mentioned Churchill. That's, fingers crossed. That could. I was just golfing with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he said, not in our lifetime, but down the road, that is going to be such a game. He feels it's going to be such a game changer. What with climate change and the fact that it's weeks, days every year that port is opened up. Anyway, so that's certainly one thing. But where are we? Well, we can talk about. You want to talk politically? You want to talk socially? You want to talk culturally? Where do you want to go with this?
Well, I'll start politically, Rick, because they just had a national poll of the approval ratings of premiers across the country. In Ontario, Doug Ford is rock bottom at barely registering at 20%. Yeah. And Wab Kinew is leader of the pack at 62%. What is it about Wab Kinew that has really touched the hearts and minds of so many people in the province that he has such a high approval rating?
So there's a few things. One is he's just a mensch, okay? He's like the kind of guy you want to just go have a beer with. There was a kind of a viral video about a year ago where he helped a woman change a flat tire. He didn't know he was being videoed. Okay, whatever. But he got out of his car and he helped this woman change a flat tire. Of course, being Indigenous, Winnipeg having the most Indigenous population in any city in Canada. It's a huge boon, but it's also a huge an issue. 90% of our foster kids are Native. So he's just a good guy. I will counter that by saying in the however long he's been in office, he hasn't really improved anything. And I don't mean that in a bad way. A lot of the problems are unfixable healthcare. Every province is trying to poach doctors and nurses from every other province. I don't know whether that's fixable, but that's one thing. But his coolness, you saw the clip of him. No Boozma until there's Kuzma or whatever that one was, right? And and then making fun of Trump with the executive orders and stuff. So people kind of like his good naturedness. He also, it's a little bit like the Liberals and the Conservatives federally. Right now, according to the polls, Carney's doing well and Poilievre really isn't making a dent. And it's a little bit like that here because we had Pallister for a long time and then Stephenson. And Stephenson was sort of the Cruella de Vil version of a politician. Like she was almost, it was a feature, not a bug, her cruelty. And so when we had a provincial election and one of the big issues was searching landfills for these, there was a few Indigenous women that had gone missing. And they were allegedly buried in the landfills. And she made it a platform plank to not search for them. And that was sort of, even though she was failing, that was the dagger, right? So he doesn't really have a lot of competition. And now Abi Khan, who you will know.
Very well, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The famous CFLer, Abi Khan, is the conservative leader here in the province. And he is a little bit like Poilievre federally. He doesn't have a lot of traction right now. And ironically, I don't know if you know this, that Abi Khan, to become an MLA, he beat Willard Reeves in the by-election.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So CFL and CFL crime.
Yeah, isn't that? And one was Abi Khan conservative, but Willard Reeves liberal, and he barely won. It was really close. So it was kind of an interesting CFL legend MLA runoff. So it's pretty fascinating. And the Liberals, where Willard Reeves ran for, Liberals don't even register in this province. So that's not even a thing. So you've got NDP that are really holding the fort. And then you've got the Conservatives, and then the Liberals are kind of sort of a non-issue right now.
You touched upon healthcare and wait times, and it made national headlines a few months ago about, I believe it was a woman in a Winnipeg hospital in the waiting area for like 30 some hours who suffered catastrophic health issues. It's a problem in every province in the country. From a Manitoba standpoint, what is the big stumbling block to improving healthcare in those wait times?
It's the same as every province. It's the federal transfers. It's like, I don't, like I said, I don't know that problem is solvable. Every other province says, hey, we're recruiting nurses from other provinces, but every other province is trying to take our nurses and our doctors. One plus is that because of the situation in the States right now, there's a lot of nurses and doctors that are coming up from the States. I know in BC, I just saw a thing about 6 weeks ago. They've managed to poach quite a few doctors and nurses from, I think, Texas and Deep South. Those professionals aren't happy with the situation. But it's just the same thing all over. There's too many people, not enough services. You want to cut taxes or at least keep them level, but you want to increase services, impossible. So either you raise taxes, which no politician wants to do, or you don't get the services you want, which is generally what is happening.
I mean, for a lot of people in Ontario, I have family in the Maritimes. I have a daughter living in Alberta now. We always see the license plate friendly Manitoba. So it always shocks a lot of Canadians, Rick, when they see the crime rates in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, and the drug-related issues. Why is it so out of control in parts of Manitoba?
Okay, I have to be really careful here. You know, I'm a foster parent of a couple of Native kids. So
I do.
Notwithstanding, because we have, I think the latest poll was 110,000 Natives living in Winnipeg out of 800,000. So that's and most of them in the downtown area. So a lot of that crime is Indigenous on Indigenous, and that doesn't diminish it at all. I'm just saying that there's a real problem. You've got, and we could talk for hours, but I think we have about 63 reserves in Manitoba. A lot of them aren't, now they're being flooded. We just had torrential rainstorms about a week ago. A couple of them get flooded every year. They're in the wrong place. Some of them have been flooded on purpose because of our hydro. So they're in these isolated reserves and there's nothing to do. And so they come to Winnipeg and then there's nothing to do. So it's just, you can go all the way back to Jean Chrétien's white paper. You can really go back a long way if you want, but that certainly is like, so you ask about the crime. If I'm walking downtown Winnipeg, and I remember years ago when you and I were doing the Argos, we walked downtown. I don't ever feel unsafe. Neither does my wife. You can walk downtown, maybe not at 2 a.m, but in the evening, and we've got a thriving, you started this thing with Portage and Main. We just opened Portage and Main again to pedestrians after 40 years, I think.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah, it was closed and there was a mall underneath it. So you couldn't walk across Portage and Main, which a lot of us thought was really stupid. So they finally opened it up again. We've got the Winnipeg Gold Eyes in the AA. They play right downtown in a beautiful park. So there is a lot of good stuff happening downtown. But it's like any city, I mean, we always joke, my son and I went to Chicago a few years ago and my wife said, you need a money belt to hide your money? And I go, no, it's no more dangerous than Winnipeg. Just common sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but sure. And then of course the homeless, right? That's a huge deal. We've got riverbanks and there's lots of camps and then they want to get rid of the homeless, but they have to go somewhere. So they just set up camp somewhere else, right?
You know what? And the reason I bring it up is I know Justin Trudeau talked about it in 2015, how he promised potable, clean drinking water for every Indigenous reservation in the country. As long as I can remember, as a young man, politicians have promised to help the Indigenous population. And having a Wab Kinew as premier helps, but federally, I'm still waiting for someone to do something tangible instead of just throwing money at the problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and if I could I have to be really careful, but because of our involvement with our kids, and my wife's been working for First Nations for the last 30 years, one of the problems is you can give there's a lot of very high functioning reserves. I was just in Kelowna a couple of weeks ago. You go down to Osoyoos and have hotels and casinos and wineries, and but they have the resources, right? You're not so much. Like I said, you might be on a isolated island with no resources. Well, how do you make money, right? So you have to be really, I have to be really careful about how I couch everything. And I hope you're editing this, because now I've completely lost my train of thought. What was the original?
No, it's a sensitive subject, Rick, and I get it that there's the balance between understanding the reality of certain pockets, whether it's the James Bay, like in the middle of nowhere, Northern Ontario or Northern Quebec, or I mean, some of those isolated communities. It's like you say, where you get the income to lift them up by their bootstraps that you see in other places.
Right. And you were talking about the water plants. So specifically the water plants. So the federal government can throw $500 million at a water plant in northwestern Ontario. But if Billy and Jimmy, or whoever are in charge of the water plant, don't put the chemicals in at the right time, the water plant becomes completely rusted out and shot after 6 months. So it's like, you hear of a lot of fires, house fires on reserves. Well, if they can't find the keys for the fire truck, or if the fire truck is empty because someone didn't fill it up, those millions of dollars that they give the reserves don't really do anything unless there's some way to follow through. But if you're too hands-on, then you're micromanaging, and that doesn't work either. So there's just a whole system that needs to be sort of changed, and I don't know how you do that.
Here in Ontario, the middle class is shrinking fast, right? There are pockets where there is no middle class. What is the state of the middle class in Manitoba, and is it still somewhere where someone with a decent job can afford a place to live?
Yeah, two answers. The middle class is certainly shrinking, but yeah, you can still buy a house for $300,000. A nice starter house. A friend of mine in Abbotsford just helped his son buy an 800 square bungalow for $850,000. So we're not there yet. We are Manitoba. We are landlocked. We have mosquitoes, blah, blah, blah. But we keep telling ourselves no hurricanes, no alligators, no snakes. So that's our mantra here, right? We just keep telling ourselves that. Yeah, it's certainly not like it was when you and I were younger, but you can, if you have a little help, and now you have to have less of a down payment. Yeah, you're not going to get a nice house on the best street in Winnipeg, but you can live 25 minutes from the city in a decent house for $300,000. Yeah, it's not unreachable, certainly.
And I know from my daughters, who are adults now post school, they have friends who are migrating to Manitoba, to the west, to other parts of the country, because they realize they simply will never be able to afford the starter home in Ontario, so they're going your way.
Yeah, and I always say if you move from the West Coast here, or if you move from Toronto East here, you're gonna and you have a house or something, you're gonna do quite well. You're gonna be able to upgrade. If I wanted to move from our place here to Kelowna, I would have to live in squalor. But if you're moving the other way, you're and even anything. I went golfing with a friend of mine from BC the other day, and he goes, "I'm sorry, how much was it to golf? $60." He goes, "Is that twilight rate?" I go, "No, that's about what we pay here, $60." So, in Toronto and Vancouver, it's usually about 150. So, things are lower, and yeah, I mean, if you can, and it's a great community, it's great culture, and we may get into that, but it certainly is. Yeah, I can see why your daughters or friends of them have decided, hey, if we even Saskatchewan, right? A good place to move to, and maybe Alberta shortly. Who knows?
I do want to bring up the culture. Winnipeg and Manitoba has had, when you think about the population, it's amazing the talent, broadcasting talent, journalists, music, acting, and the arts. Culturally, as you say, Rick, it really, compared to the population, the amount of elite level talent, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if official studies have been done, but anecdotally, we always joke that it's because of the cold, because people have to stay inside for 8 months of the year, and so you get very creative. You have to, otherwise you go crazy. So I think that has a lot to do with it, because even in the dead of winter, -30, the garage band bar scene here is second to none as far as I'm concerned. Even the Winnipeg Folk Festival coming up. is if not the biggest, second biggest folk festival in Canada. So, and that's just a whack of talent. I mean, I know they get people from all over the world, literally. But yeah, Winnipeg with acting and music, broadcasting. I think it's a community, and I think it is because we have to spend a lot of time indoors in winter, and we need to figure out a way to pass the time, I think.
You know, I know once upon a time in your career, you were part of a groundbreaking CBC sports show called The Sports Guys. And the Two Sports Guys. And I just had published a book with Rod Black, Cut to Black, and he talks lovingly about his time growing up in the Strathcona area, Winnipeg, and getting a start at CKY. And even though it was different people, there was a real mutual support for journalists and broadcasters and people coming out of the Winnipeg and the Manitoba area to do better.
Yeah, Rod was started a little before us, and he was quote unquote a legitimate journalist. We had a lot of fun in our show, obviously. But yeah, I mean, everyone knew everyone. You and I, before we went to air, we were talking about Steve Vogelsang, you know, now someone on parole for robbing banks. But he was there at CKY, and maybe you and Rod spoke about him a little bit because I think, Peter Young hired Rod Black, and I believe Peter Young also hired Steve Vogelsang. And so, and that's where we recorded our show in the CKY building there. So we knew a lot of people, and we had, I can't remember anyone who was not supportive of we started on a public access. I don't know if you grew up with public access TV in Ontario.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's where we started. And then at some point, someone decided to pay us. But we never were looked down on. Everyone I think encourages and cheers for everyone else to do well.
I had the privilege of working with you at a radio station that's now defunct in Toronto, Mojo Radio, and we did broadcasts together. We did Argos games together, Rick. And you spent a number of years in the GTA before you moved back. And you would tell me lovingly stories about your Volkswagen camper van and the simple, beautiful life of Manitoba as you grew up. How has it changed pre your time with the GTA and since you moved back?
How has Manitoba changed?
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, for me, probably not a lot because you're kind of set in your ways, and so I don't think for me it's changed a lot. I think people really, and so I was talking about how we get creative because we're locked in our garages for 8 months of the year. Conversely, when we do have our 4 months, which started about 2 weeks ago, then we go crazy, right? Like we camp and we swim and we fish and we just go crazy because the window is so small that you only have 4 months to kind of live 8 to 12 months of outdoors. So, but I don't, for me, it hasn't changed much. I know for my youngest is 22 and, when I was a kid, two guys and myself would rent an apartment for $300 a month. That was $100 each. And, we'd go rappel out the window and hook up our coax cable and we were good. And you could get a McDonald's meal for $1.50. And now, the cheapest one bedroom apartment is $1,100. And that's where we live in a town of 1,500 people, 25 minutes out of Winnipeg. So, that's where things have changed. Like anyone else, the prices, like for just a teenage kid or an early 20s kid that wants to just have a few years working and having fun, man, it's almost out of reach financially anyway. But culturally, I don't think it's changed much. Winnipeg has the biggest concentration of Filipino population in Canada. I think we have 70,000 or 80,000. We have a Filipino only radio station, and that's really, really enriched everyone. Their culture is fantastic. And so that's changed the complexion, I guess, of the city anyway. But I don't notice that much. I notice a huge change between Toronto and Winnipeg, certainly, but not the Manitoba I knew is still kind of the same, I think.
I know Winkler, Manitoba recently had their first ever Pride event, which obviously was a big deal for that community. And, and as you alluded to, folk festivals, music festivals, it is a great destination. There are so many Canadians, Rick, especially here in Ontario, who want nothing to do with spending their vacation money in the USA. So for those who are thinking of going to Manitoba this summer, what are some of the go-to things they should do? They're like, hey, you're going to love it. You've never been there, and they should do this, this, and this.
Okay, so the usual, I mentioned the folk festival this year. I believe it's July 8th. I'm guessing usually starts second week in July. So that's just a great time. And the music is, and I'm going to say this, the music is inconsequential. I don't mean that. The music is always unbelievable. But everyone says, I'll meet you at the beer tent. That's the thing about the folk festival. You meet at the beer tent, and there's 7 or 8 acts going on at the same time. And then at the campground, there's a family campground, and then there's a not family campground. And the not family one is where everyone takes out their guitars and starts strumming and having a good time. So there's that, of course. For me, I would tell people, and it usually blows them away. We have a beach called Grand Beach, which is about an hour north of Winnipeg, which is absolutely spectacular. And there is a legend, and I'm not sure if it's true. Did you ever hear of some guys named Chip and Pepper? Do you know these guys?
Of course, I used to wear their clothes.
Okay.
My wife threw them out.
So they were Winnipeggers. And so in the Chip and Pepper days, I believe that Grand Beach was ranked one of the top 10 beaches in North America. I'm not sure if that's true, but we told ourselves that. But it's a spectacular beach. It's on the lake. And the lake is so shallow, you can walk like 200 yards and you're only up to your waist. And it's great for kids. It's safe, and it's a spectacular beach. So I would say you absolutely have to go to Grand Beach, because you kind of come around the corner and you go, hold it. I'm in the middle of Manitoba at this unbelievable beach, perfect sand, warm water. It's spectacular. So that's, for me, that would be one of the main things. We have the Human Rights Museum, or I believe it's called the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. Mm-hmm. Which is one of those Asper. That was, I think, Izzy's project, or his daughter. That's the only museum. That's the only capital museum, in other words, federally regulated and owned, that's not in Ottawa.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's the only capital museum that's not in Ottawa, and it's a spectacular building. And when you watch the Gold Eyes game, much like if you're at a Blue Jays game, you can see the Sky Dome. If you're at a Gold Eyes game, you can see the Human Rights Museum in the outfield. It's just, and that's right by the Forks, which is the next thing I was getting to, the confluence, is that the right word? Confluence of the Assiniboine and the Red, and it's the Forks, and it's just a meeting area with lots of cool restaurants and shops and stuff. And it's out in winter, there's a skating rink, and they have outdoor giant crokinole. Have you seen this?
Oh, yes, I have online. Yes.
Yeah, with curling rocks, it's giant crokinole. So it's winter, summer. It's a great place. And all the cycle paths in Winnipeg kind of end up there. So the Forks definitely should be on your things to do.
I'm going to get to the beauty of Winnipeg in a second, because I have something to bring up with you. But I also would say to people in other parts of Canada, Manitoba has some amazing Indigenous powwows. And if you want to experience Indigenous culture in a real loving atmosphere, I think that would be something they should check out as well.
Yeah, and the Forks definitely, because the Forks is on Indigenous land. The Forks has powwows all the time, and then local reserves. Absolutely, there's no shortage of, and sweats. Right, you go to Sweat Lodge, you can do a lot of that too. And so there's it's a long Aboriginal name. I can't remember the name of it. It's a little bit in north of Winnipeg, and it's also a cultural center. And we have the Tommy Prince Recreational Center as well. So there's lots of things in Winnipeg that are directly related to, and we have a major east-west route in Winnipeg, and it used to be called Bishop Grandin Boulevard. And Bishop Grandin, now we know, was a terrible human being. And so we changed it about 5 years ago to Abinogi Mikana, which I don't know, probably means traffic jam in the I should know what it means. Everyone thought it was going to be terrible and nobody would ever catch on to the name. And now everyone calls it that. Like everything else, we don't even notice it. So yeah, there's lots of Indigenous cultural things that you can absolutely get set up with here.
I know a lot of Americans who came to play in Winnipeg in the CFL never left. They stayed there. A lot of guys who played in the Winnipeg Jets stayed there. Winnipeg gets a bad rap among other Canadians and among their pro sports. But what is it about the certain thing about the city and the province that for a lot of the people that are there, they fall in love with it. They don't leave. Well,
did you see Ehlers' little speech after he won the Stanley Cup about Winnipeg?
Oh, it was emotional, wasn't it?
The year before, did you see Paul Maurice?
Oh, I got choked up listening to that.
So there you go. There is I say this to all kinds of people, especially because, we used to do, or you do, sports. Here, generally what happens, there'll be a story about Blake Wheeler. When he was here, he'll be in a coffee shop or at a greenhouse, and there'll be a little kid that wants an autograph. And of course, the parents go, no, don't bother him. It's a day off. Leave him alone. And so the player inevitably will go up to the kid and say, look, I noticed you were, would you like my autograph? So we just leave them alone. If you see them, you might go, hey, nice game. You know, I know Toronto is a little bit more caustic, right? I know it's not New York.
Just a wee bit.
Yeah, it's not quite Philadelphia level, but it is a little more, in your face. So I think there's that. And again, I go back to it again. Because of the weather, there's just a sense of community. Like we're all sort of, fighting the same things. We're all fighting 8 months of winter. We're all fighting, terrible roads with construction. We're all fighting mosquitoes. We're all fighting that 2-month window of having nice weather, and we all are in it together. And so I think it just behooves us to be nice to each other. I think there might be something to that.
I know climate and climate emergency and the environment is such a big concern for all Canadians. I've noticed as I've gotten older, weather patterns have changed. We just came out of a really, really bad winter in Southern Ontario. How has weather changed from your childhood to life in Manitoba in 2026?
Oh, drastically. Up until a couple of years ago, I had a rink in my yard, and I don't anymore because every January, February, we'd have 10 days of plus, and the whole thing would melt, and I'd have to start all over again. And it takes 17 coats just to skate on an outdoor rink, by the way, I know. It's a lot of work. It's great. I love doing it. But I mean, so there's that. Just last week, we got, right where I am now, we got 7 inches of rain in 90 minutes.
What?
I'm not doing this from my basement now because our basement is completely flooded, and all our neighbors. So crazy weather is just the norm now, right? I mean, we had tornado warnings. We had 2 tornadoes touch down a week ago within 10 miles of our house. And we were in the house, and my wife was going, should we go in the basement? I go, nah, it's fine. We're almost getting inured to it, right? Because it just happens so many times. And like I said, we get hot weather like Calgary, a little bit like the Chinook. We get hot weather in winter. We get, I think 5 years ago, it was snowing in August here. I mean, it's very different than it used to be. And then, well, we can talk about the whole Churchill thing later, but that all the polar bears are starting to come farther and farther south because the ice is breaking up early and they don't have any place to hang out and stuff. So yeah, it's changed a lot since I was a kid.
So how far south are the polar bears migrating in Manitoba?
Okay, that's a good question. I should have known you were going to ask me that. I don't know because they're up in Churchill. And by the way, on my list of things to do in Manitoba, certainly going to see the polar bears in Churchill. I was remiss to not mention that. That is, I haven't done it. It's not cheap, but apparently it's spectacular. And you know that in Churchill, you're not allowed to lock your vehicle doors when you park because if someone is attacked by a polar bear, they need to be able to get into the closest vehicle.
Because they don't mess around, those polar bears, do they?
Do not mess around with polar bears. I don't know how far they are south. They might be even in Thompson. I think they're in Thompson already, which is
okay,
farther south than Churchill. But yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is that day to day, you can sort of count on the weather. Like, okay, it's June, whatever. I mean, May long weekend. And that's one funny, interesting thing about Manitoba and Ontario. You guys, when I was there, you call May long weekend May 24.
Yeah.
Which is either because of the 24 beers in a case or because it fell on May 24th. Do we know why?
Both. It's both. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here we just call it May long.
Okay.
It's just called May long. But the high for the Monday of May long was 6. So you can count on sort of the seasons, but in those seasons, you just never know. We had a week of 35 2 weeks ago. And then like I said, that was just before May long, which was +6. So there's no, I saw a tent set up, what's today, Tuesday, 3 days ago on a Saturday, a wedding tent just down the road from my place. And it was 16 and pouring rain. And I'm sure the couple didn't count on that. So yeah, it's like the stock market always goes like this, but while it goes like this, it goes up and down.
Yeah.
Our weather is steady, but in that steadiness, it goes up and down a lot more. And the world's getting hotter too, right? Just in general.
So I want to circle back to Churchill, Manitoba, and the ports. Prime Minister Carney, Premier Kinew, and other officials keep saying that this is something they can get done and ship liquid natural gas to Europe so they can cut out Russia altogether. But you're making it sound like this could be years in the making, Rick?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is going to be years. There's so much work that needs to be done. And it's what is it? A memorandum of understanding, right? I think
Yes.
much like the one that Carney signed with Smith in Alberta. Oh yeah, for sure, years in the making. I mean, there's so much because it's not a major port. There's so much work to be done. Rail lines, but sure, Alberta, whether they stay part of Canada or not, they will they get their pipeline to the Pacific Coast? I don't know. Lots of Indigenous people say no. EB says no. Whatever. There's lots of people that say no. If they want to come here, it's just Saskatchewan. Scott Moe, he's all for that. He's like, and Saskatchewan's really, I think, a great example of how a province has, in the last 20 years, just outperformed itself, right? Economically. So it makes sense. I think the big thing is, when is climate change going fast enough, which is an odd thing to say, so that it'll become a viable port and not just 2 months of the year, because you can't spend hundreds of billions of dollars for 2 months of the year. So I think there's lots of work to be done yet, but it's one of the ones I think Carney was going to fast track, right? I think he had a list of 10 or whatever that he was going to fast track. So it's good to know that we're on the radar that way. And Wab Kinew wants it very badly, and the province wants it very badly. So I don't think there's pipelines. There's always people in the way or issues in the way. Here, there's nothing in the way except I don't know, money, bureaucracy, but no, there's nobody that says we don't want it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Rick, I know you and your wife, I've known you guys for years. I know how devoted you are to your kids, now young adults. Are you excited for their future in Manitoba, for your kids?
Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, as much as I would be in any province, sure. Like we talked about affordability. My brother has kids the same age. He's in Kelowna. Well, his kids can't afford anything. And they're two of his boys are engineers, but they're just starting out. There's not even a chance that they could afford a house. My kids and I, we were looking at a condo as an investment the other day in Winnipeg for $149,000.
Really?
In a bit of a sketchier area, but it's an area that's being, spruced up a little bit, and you can.
Yes.
Affordability. In that sense, I don't think that's going to be a problem. To be honest with you, my biggest fear with my kids and that generation is politically and I know we're not going to get into it, but what's going on globally with the states and how they're sort of destroying everything that you and I grew up with. So for me, that's way bigger concern than anything here locally.
But are you finding, I know in Ontario, I have friends that they'll go to their local No Frills and they refuse to buy any American produce.
Yeah.
They're so upset. Is it the same sentiment in Manitoba where people are not traveling to the States, not buying American and being, Canada first, second, and third?
Absolutely. We're about an hour and 15 from the U.S. border where we are. So Winnipeg's about the same. And then Grand Forks, North Dakota is another hour. So that's sort of the destination. And there's Fargo. So those two are sort of the destination, and us included, tens of thousands of people every year would go for long weekends down to hotels. Even though we were getting killed on the dollar with Target and stuff, it was still a soft. It's a vacation. And just I don't, what is it, down 60%? I feel bad for the North Dakota shop owners because they're great people. But at some point, it's one thing we as Canadians can do. And in fact, I'll give you an example. In October now, I'm turning 65. Big birthday for me. I got OAS, man. If there's money in the account, I'm excited. And so me and some guys want to go golfing, but we're not going to the States. So now we're thinking, because normally we would just drive south until maybe South Dakota until it got warm enough where the courses were open. Now we're thinking, well, maybe we could probably still golf in Victoria in October, right? So what we're trying to figure out, or maybe go to Cabo San Lucas for 4 days because it's a direct flight. But normally it's a no-brainer. Let's go down to the States, just drive down, but now it's like no, and it's across the board. At least, I mean, you hang out with like-minded people, obviously, right? We all live in a bit of an echo chamber, but none of the people that I hang out with would ever go to the States.
And Rick, as we wrapping up here, I have the same sort of experience with all our friends and connections and acquaintances that even if, say, Trump, once he gets voted out and the Democratic president is coming in and maybe changes the mindset, it's not going to be immediate. It's going to take time till we forgive them. That's what I'm hearing.
I think it's a generation is what it is. I mean, even look what's going on with you with the Gordie Howe Bridge now, right? I mean, there's no reason except one billionaire doesn't want it to happen. There's no reason that bridge shouldn't be open. And so there is just, for sure it's a generation, because anything that the administration does now, nobody trusts them. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day, I don't know how you feel, when this agreement that they've just signed with Iran, I tend to believe Iran more than I believe that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like, Trump says, this is what we got, and Iran says, this is what we got. And you're thinking, I think Iran's probably not lying, you know? So, I think you're right. I think once, however it happens, once this current administration is gone, however it happens, then all the other countries will have the cards, and we will go, and Canada specifically will go back to them and say, hey, we're going to do this. Hold on a second. No, we're not so fast. Like, just like you said, not so fast. We're in charge because you guys blew it for 4 years and then 4 years. So now we're going to make the decisions on how we want to go. And, you know, if you don't like Carney, that's fine. The idea of him, all the provinces going around the states, negotiating new deals, like I mentioned, Saskatchewan, Trump notwithstanding, has been a great idea for Canada and long time coming, right? Should have done this a long time ago.
I couldn't agree more. And it's funny you bring that up. I've heard that from more than a few people, that they've never felt more Canadian, more proud to be Canadian, and more focused on spending money and traveling in Canada than they have in the last couple of years.
Right. And why not? You know, Canada is huge and it's got so much stuff going for it. And there's so many places I have never seen. So, you know, I mean, we like the weather in winter because if you drive, it's warmer if you get down to the deep south. But you know, Florida is definitely off the radar for a while. And I think, I mean, I think we're all holding our breath right now with the administration going, let's see what happens in the midterms. If there are midterms, I know that's a whole other conversation. And then maybe we can get back to some civility, and then maybe we can start driving to Grand Forks and getting bottles of wine for $6, you know, or whatever it is us Manitobans do down in the States for the weekend. You know, it would be nice to have that relationship again. But
my wife is she's counting down the days to the end of administration, so her and her girlfriends can go to Target in Niagara Falls because they're boycotting it.
I know. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Love going down. When we went down, my wife, if I went down with some guys, she said, okay, you got to buy cheese. All right. I'm buying cheese. And now we can't get cheap cheese at Target anymore because we have to buy it here. But you're right about locally too. I have an app on my phone that scans the UPC code and tells me where something's made, because as you know, some of the grocery stores have been package washing, whatever the new term is, or, you know, and so this will tell you if it's made. So I'll scan something and what haven't we had for so long that we were just talking about the other day? There's something that we really missed and we haven't had it for so long, but because you can't get it grown, then we just don't eat it anymore. And it's like, oh, that's too bad. But no, we're not buying it, you know.
Nope, we're not doing it.
That's funny. Well, Rick, I'm glad we're on the same page that way.
Oh, that's one thing that's united all Canadians, no matter what your language and background is.
Not all of them, not Alberta, not 20% of Albertans, Jimmy.
Well, okay, wait a second. Our daughter, who's almost 25, is a very left-leaning NDP supporting master's student. She is definitely on our side. So she's one of the good ones in Alberta right now.
Oh, she's in Alberta.
Yeah. She's in Edmonton doing her master's at U of A.
Yeah, but Edmonton's a little bit like Austin, right? Like Austin, Texas.
Yes.
You know, Austin is in the middle of this deep red stuff. Austin is this very left-leaning city, and Edmonton is very like socially progressive too that way. So she's got a bit of a nice echo chamber around her too, eh?
Definitely. Rick, you're one of the good ones, one of my favorite people. We'll definitely have you on again to touch base on all things Manitoba and Wab Kinew and Winnipeg, and all the best to you and the family over the summer, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. Nice chatting with you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Looking for reliable and convenient personal safety products? Less Lethal has you covered. As Canada's only authorized Byrna distributor, we provide a range of products for recreation, protection, and security. Explore our Byrna launcher lineup, including the LE, SD, TCR, and Mission 4, designed for different levels of performance and protection needs. We also offer the Banshee personal safety alarm, designed to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals. Because your safety is our top priority. Shop now at lesslethal.ca.